Today I'm joined by Bader, a cancer survivor and also a former professional footballer. But he's using the cancer to now build a generation full of maybe support for the youngsters coming through and the people who are battling with cancer. But Bader, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, Jamie. It'll be my pleasure to share with you.
Well, as I mentioned, it's really interesting because we don't often hear about these stories where people have had cancer and then carry on, carry on off the pitch. Some people carry on the pitch, but some people just give up, essentially, that they can't carry on. And some people even lose their lives to cancer. But you are Syrian, and you're half English. Talk to me about the time in Syria. So you've moved back to the UK since then, but growing up in Syria, what was that like?
I think I will surprise a few people what I say because when you hear of my country and where we're from and everything, you have quite a bad connotation now with, the last decade or so of the war that's happened. But my life back home was very pleasant. It was extremely enjoyable. For me, it was a very nice country to live in. It was pretty safe. Things were pretty good. We had access to good schools. We had access to relatively good services, and it was an enjoyable time. I was surrounded by my whole family, and yeah, I had quite a privileged life back home. So the transition here was not easy because when your family loses a lot of their work and everything like this, it's not easy to get back on your feet and move halfway across the world. Even though we had family here and everything like this, but everything happens for a reason, and we're blessed. I can't like we're in a much much better position than other people. So all you can say is we're blessed.
What's Syrian football like? Is it quite fast? Is there a lot of Syrian football out there? Is that the main sport?
Well, people are football mad in Syria. People won't tell you this, I don't think, too much because they don't know too much about the country itself. Never mind the football. For football mad, people are sports mad in general. They really, really like, the sports, the foreign leagues, the English leagues are quite big, but mainly Real Madrid, Barcelona. I think that's a Middle East thing. They love Real Madrid and Barcelona. And recently, if you were following the Asian Cup, I think we got through to the group stage for the first time ever as a national team. So it's okay. Obviously, before the war, I think we were ranked number four in Asia in terms of the league rankings, and we used to get like some clubs used to get some pretty good attendances, like in the 20 and 30,000s. And Al Ittihad and Aleppo even won the Asian Champions League in 2010 or 11, I want to say, one of the two. So football in general, in terms of the people, they partake in it regularly. Our biggest problem is we don't have facilities and the infrastructure for it. That's why you're not seeing a stronger national team. But in terms of the participation and in terms of the passion for it, very, very good. We tend to get a lot of intense physical players, including myself, because that's just the way we are as a people. We're quite intense. A lot of us are quite physically gifted, so you'll get a lot of people who are naturally quite athletic. Um, and I think if the infrastructure is put in place and we get some proper people in and around the setup, I think we can have a very, very good national team going forward.
But what do you think's stopping the infrastructure and the people going to Syria? Is it just the name, like you said, like the Western media may tarnish it with a poor reputation?
Well, there's a lot of different factors. Obviously, there's not much. Well, Syria is a country under sanctions, so there's not much money going around anyway. So there's let alone money for sports. Like the economic situation is extremely bad as a result of a multitude of factors, but it's extremely bad. And as you said, like we're not allowed to play games at home because of the war and everything. Because by FIFA standards, the opposing national team isn't safe if they come and play in within the country. And the Syrian FA have their finances frozen, so they're not allowed to invest in different things. They even struggle to pay coaches. So, like it's a very, very difficult situation for the whole country, not just the sports. So sports has just sort of taken like a bit of a sideward step for now.
Did you play football in Syria? Was that your first introduction to football, or was it when you moved back to the UK?
Well, we have a little bit of a family legacy when it comes to this. So my granddad, who's now passed on, he was part of the first ever national team that played for Syria. Um, so he played against, ironically, Palestine in the 1950s in the first ever national team. You
Wow.
know, when everybody got given their like sort of national status and people started having national teams and things like this. So they went and played a couple of games against each other, and we've still got pictures of it at home and everything like this. So, through my mum's side of the family, certainly it's something that runs through our blood. So another thing is we're huge Man United fans. I'm sure a lot of people love that. So we've had like a season ticket at Man United in our family since the 1960s.
Wow.
Because my granddad then moved over to the UK in the 60s. So on my mum's side, so it's something that's always been ingrained in us. Like we've always been into it. We've always watched games. We've always played, but not to the same level. We don't have the same infrastructure or the same sort of like organized leagues and 11-a-side as like what's prevalent in the UK. So I think I took full advantage of it when I came over.
Manchester United then. What do you make of their season so far? I mean, not the best of starts, you would say.
Yeah, I have a lot of strong opinions, let's say.
Well, look, the time in Syria sounds amazing from yourself, but maybe from the outside, for some people in Western countries or maybe across the world, it's not seen as a safe country. Don't know why. You know, I'm not going to talk into politics and wars and that kind of stuff. But for you, you said you lived quite a nice life out there. Just except for the footballing terms, there was a lack of infrastructure, and then when you came to the UK, like you said, you made full advantage of it. What was it like then to go from that into the UK to then see all these facilities and you can walk down the road, you'll probably see a football pitch. What was that like? That obviously wasn't the case in Syria.
Okay, so I'll answer this in two stages. I'll answer it on the footballing side and the general life side transition. So one thing you need to understand is when somebody comes over from a country like from that part of the world, let's say, life is completely different on every sort of facet, in terms of culture, language, mentality, systems, everything. So the transition period was very, very difficult. I came over a little bit younger. The younger you are, the easier it is. And I already spoke very, very good English because my mum's like, she grew up in the UK. So we always had like a very, very good sort of level of English. So the transition was tough. It wasn't easy. It was tough for me in terms of like establishing and trying to connect with people as well. Here, it's very, very different. So that part was hard, but the footballing part was my way of sort of just integrating, if that makes sense. So integrating into like society, integrating into my schools, everything like this. I was always relatively decent at a young age, not to toot my own horn too much, but I was always decent. So that always helps, going through high school and primary school with the social aspect of things, being in the football team and everything like this. And it was great, just playing every Monday, playing an academy every Monday here locally in Manchester, and then obviously playing for your team on a Saturday, Sunday. It was amazing. So I have great, great memories.
Is there no Sunday league in Syria? Was it so when you came here, it was like the first introduction to a weekly football?
So not really, no, because we don't have like the organization, if that makes sense. So there's not like, if, for example, here you've got like the Manchester FA that put leagues on and things like this. We don't have those systems in place in the country. And the main problem of it was the facilities. There's not enough facilities. So the most that you sort of got was like a schools league, which was all right. But when you're at my age, like I moved out of Syria when I was 8. So when you were at my age, there wasn't that much going on when you're at that age.
What was it like to be up in Manchester into such a big city, a hectic city, really, really crazy, and some of the stuff up there must have been very different to life in the Middle East. So you've come to Manchester, and then you're playing regularly. But is there a lot of facilities? Because I've never been actually to Manchester. Is there a lot of green space? Because I know it's quite a built up area. So is there a lot of like your rural green parks and that kind of stuff?
So if you go towards the city centre, you'll find probably a football pitch, probably every 300-400 meters, as I'd say. There's a lot in colleges, even private facilities. There's a lot. So the chances for you to come and play are a lot. I think there's 4 power leagues here in Manchester, and then you've got all the schools, and then you've got things like Platt Lane, which is like City's old training ground, and few different facilities like that. And then a lot of the schools also hire their Astros out, and I think 90% of like high school, if I had to rough estimate, have like 4G AstroTurfs available. So in terms of facilities, you're spoiled really. And whether you live a little bit far out as well, or you live like locally, I'm just saying like the schools tend to have that space. So I think they've done it quite well here in terms of just the availability. And I think that's proven in like, let's say, the non-league system here. The non-league system in Manchester is very, very strong, I think, because people are always playing. There's always a plethora of talent to recruit from. And yeah.
You playing Sunday League in Manchester at the age of 8, 9, 10. When did you start to understand that you could take it on professionally? You said earlier that you were, a very good player at a young age. So what was that actually? Was that from your parents? Was there constant training? Were you just out and about and somehow you just managed to be good?
Well, I was like every other young lad, I think, that grows up. Well, most want to be a professional footballer. So we I was playing regular, and at that point I hadn't really been coached, if that makes sense. I just had a lot of like off the cuff sort of ability. For my age, I was always physically quite gifted. Always had a little bit of a turn of pace, and I was always quite strong for my age. So at the start, I was sort of just like very raw, even for that age. Just sort of, I'd get it and I'd dribble past 3 or 4 players, and then ball would go wherever you want. So it was a little bit strange, but then as I got coached over like a 4 or 5 year period, I started to full on understand, what things to do, what things I can't do. And I'd say until recently, I was always a little bit like tactically inferior because I hadn't had that early like sort of coaching nourishment at an early age. I think that's key for any kid that wants to make it into the professional game is they get that tactical awareness in quite as early as possible. So it was difficult at the start. I didn't used to play. I was in the team. I was at a team, for example. I didn't used to play much. A lot of the kids didn't like me too much as a person because I looked a bit different. I spoke a bit different. I was a little bit different, and it was like a closed group of friends. So you know what kids are like. They don't really like integrate as much. I think the new generation are probably a lot better than that generation. But so it was difficult at the start, and I was playing at Sunday League level for 5 years. I want to say, 4 or 5 years. And then when I was 12, I got picked up at Rochdale, and it was actually through school. It wasn't through my Sunday League team. So I got picked up through Rochdale, and it was good, yeah. So I went in. That was my first ever trial at a football club. I went in and I got signed.
You mentioned that you were inferior of tactics in a sense where you maybe didn't understand the game as much as you do now, or there's just a difference in quality because I always talk to people, and a lot of them are from Bulgaria, or it could be from Asia, or they could be from anywhere, and they always say, well, we know anyway as a fact that English football, Italian football, they're all different to each other, and for a Bulgarian they might be more built up and strong than fast, for example, than an English person. That's the comparison that a lot of people like to make. Would you say that the tactical side was the thing that was different in Syria compared to the UK?
Yeah, I think the physicality was very similar because, as I said, we're quite an athletic people. So a lot of it was like long bally football, a little bit like it was here. It's not like that anymore, by the way, in the UK. And I certainly saw that towards the end of my time within the professional system. A lot of teams want to play now. A lot of teams want to, have a bit more of a technical sort of basis for their coaching, which I think is very, very positive. You're seeing it in the new generation of English footballers, for example. I'll toot Kobbie Mainoo all the time because obviously I'm a Man United fan. I think whoever coached him how to play football needs a lifetime contract at Man United because his calmness, his tactical awareness, his decision making at that age is so rare. Like you don't find that at all. So and then you've got obviously the likes of Foden, Bellingham doing big things at the best clubs in the world at the minute. So I think that part of it was very, very like key towards to just bridging that sort of gap in development. And it took time, but we got there in the end.
You think Kobbie Mainoo will be on the plane for Euros?
Should be, that's for sure.
Really?
In my
Over,
opinion, he should be, yes.
Who would you pick him over?
Calvin Phillips.
Well, I don't think he was in contention, to be honest, anyway. But
Well,
what was it?
he's been picked, hasn't he? Like every single squad he's been picked without playing. So
Is that a weakness, do you think, from Southgate? We see with Maguire, we see with Calvin Phillips, we see with these players that aren't really getting game time with elite clubs, and they're still getting called up for a nation that really should be winning the competition.
well, Maguire's a little bit different for me because while Maguire he's one player of the month in the Premier League this year, so I don't think you put him in the same boat as a Calvin Phillips. But Calvin Phillips in general in a position where you have loads and loads of competition from very, very good players. I like James Garner at Everton. I think he's very, very good. I even think James Ward-Prowse, how he doesn't get a look in, I have no idea with his set piece, especially in a tournament. You need somebody like that in your squad, I think. So it'll be an interesting decision when he picks his squad. I think he'll take Henderson anyway. I know despite his moves, I think he will take Henderson anyway because I think it's important to have like that sort of character now in and around the squad. So we'll see. It'll be interesting.
What was it like to get the feeling from your school to be recognised? You mentioned there that a few players haven't actually been recognised in the professional game, like Ward-Prowse for England, but you've been recognised by your school. You know, you've been picked from quite a lot of children to be able to go and represent them at a football club, and you ended up spending 4 years there. But what was the trial like at Rochdale? You know, a professional football club.
Amazing. I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the majority of my time there. I have great, great memories. And I'm still friends with a lot of the lads that I like grew up with, and a lot of them did have done very, very good things. Some of them like on scholarships in America. One of them's on the bench for Brentford every week in the Premier League. Um, and different sort of avenues that have gone into the game. So I really, really enjoyed it. I have like great memories. They're a club that at the time were on the up. A club that at one point nearly went up to the championship. So, um, they like to play. They had a huge emphasis on the academy. So the academy was very well, like forensically looked after all the time, which I really, really enjoyed. And yeah, great club.
You mentioned the majority of your time you enjoyed at Rochdale. Was there some things that maybe didn't really click with you so well?
Yeah, towards the end, some stuff happened which I don't really want to mention in a public setting, which were just underwhelming because it was just a shame the way it ended. I think it was a football club that, like, if I had progressed the way that I was on track to progress previously, I would have not left for a very, very, very long time because I really enjoyed the people there. I really enjoyed the atmosphere there. Um, but yeah, things happen, and you've got to do different things in football.
And then Stockport was next, right? 3 years at
Yes.
Stockport, a good amount of time. And then, we'll talk about what happened after that. But, the move from Rochdale to Stockport, who got you into that move?
So after everything happened, when I left Rochdale, or when we had a bit of a mutual termination, it was like it was the COVID year. So that time period was very, very, very strange for everybody. That I'm sure everyone will tell you that. For example, I didn't do any GCSEs that year. I got them by default or whatever you want to call
Lucky.
it. So so in that summer, you're sort of like scratching around looking for clubs, looking for contracts, because I think it was March then that everybody had broken up, and a lot of players hadn't like signed. A lot of players were on trial here, there, and everywhere, and people hadn't made like final decisions. Because normally it's like the end of March, pretty much everybody sorts their scholarship squads out for the following season, and then they might add one or two more in pre-season or whatever. So I left Rochdale in that season around late December, and I went on trial at a couple of clubs and just to see what clubs were like. So I think I went in at Stoke, I went in at Oldham, I went in at Salford, all like local clubs here. Um, and then Stockport came about towards the end, and then obviously Stockport that February had had the takeover from Mark Stott, who's amazing, amazing person. I'll put this out there on this now as well. Had the takeover, and he had big, big plans for the club. So I remember just having a meeting with the academy manager, who's Damien Allen, who another special mention to him, one of the best people in football. So yeah, I had a meeting with him, and he told me that this is what we want, this is what we see you doing, this is the way we see you progressing, everything like this. He said, come down to one of these trial dates, but I'm sure you'll be fine, but just show your face. So I went down to like pre-season. It was like non-contact, and you just basically just had to, show that you're technically quite good. It's like a lot of touch stuff and everything like that. And I did well, and I got signed. So yeah.
The comeback in that COVID year was quite immense. I remember it was a very hot year. Like that time in COVID was a really hot year, really strange, as you said. You couldn't see family. When you could hug them through like a mask and weird, just really crazy alien-like stuff. But that comeback in that year, after you're not playing football for maybe a few months, few weeks, to come back to doing stuff that's not contacts, you're not going near anyone, you're not making the tackles. Again, stuff that's not really what footballers should be doing. They should be in the tackles, but obviously COVID came in the way. Was that what was that like then to go? Because you're trying to look for a contract here. You're really trying to prove yourself, and to prove yourself in a setting where you can't basically be a footballer. You have to do some of the stuff. What was that like?
I'll be honest with you, and I'll let you in on something I probably shouldn't say. I was doing a lot of work in that COVID stuff. So I was doing a lot of work with some of my friends who were like not in the same boat, just at clubs that wanted to keep themselves sharp. So we did a lot of work in like from that March till like I think we went in again in August, if I'm not mistaken. So we did a lot of work, and I actually improved a lot over that time period. It was the fittest I think I'd ever been, and technically I was quite sound. So one thing that really really helped me in them early months was the fact that I was sharp, I was fit, and I was ready to go, and I did really really well. So that helped, and it just allowed me to add another sort of facet to my game. As I said, like technically, I was always okay, but not at the level of like some of the other lads in the squad. And then that sort of time period just helped me catch up a little bit. And I'd also had quite a lot of interruptions between like under 15 and under 16. So my fitness levels at the time weren't great. I'd had like some niggly injuries and some stuff happening off the pitch and things like this. So I just had to keep my fitness and my sharpness up in preparation for that.
I always ask people why. I mean, maybe you thought about it, but obviously we'll talk about what happened during and after this. Going abroad in a long term, was that ever an option to you? Maybe to go and play in Poland or to go and play in a different country. Was that ever an appealing option for you, or was the UK the place where you wanted to be?
Um, I'll be honest with you, and I'll say this very, very bluntly. I don't think the UK is a great place for young players, and I'll say this again and again and again. I just don't think it is. I don't think the environment is good. I don't think even players that get like youth moves. I know a few lads that have like been at Stockport, for example, and got to move up. I just don't think it's a good system at all. I think it's for the benefits of the clubs, and I don't think the players get much good out of it. Is probably the best way to put it. So I did think about it, and I even had offers to do it, but I have a culturally different family where they wanted to keep me at home as much as possible. So, and I went down obviously for fulfilling my education and finishing my education as well. So, yeah, I would definitely like, for example, a country like Spain, I think is much, much better than here for a young player. Much, much better. The style of football, the coaching is much, much better than here. Um, and like obviously the Swedens of this world and the Poland and even Denmark is very, very good. Are also good options, but it's all about opportunity at the end of the day.
So then, the time at Stockport ended after 3 years, and you can tell everyone why it ended. But that decision and the heartbreak that you must have felt to decide to basically stop playing football.
Yeah. So it was going quite well for about 18 months at Stockport. I was doing quite well. I was enjoying it a lot, to be honest with you. It was the first time in maybe 2 or 3 years that I'd started to really enjoy my football again. And that's because I had coaches who I'm a very sort of particular character when it comes to football. I'm a sort of lad that needs the right sort of coach around him. I'm very intense. I'm very calm with you now. But on a football pitch, and when it's to do with training and career and things like this, I'm very, very intense. So I need the right sort of stewardship to coach me and to guide me through. And when I didn't have that, my performances went a little bit, particularly at Rochdale. But then when I found that at County with people like Michael Rains, Paul Turnbull, Mike Jeffries, who are very, very good coaches, people that played for the club, people that understand what the club's like, and people that understood me as a character very, very well, they got the best out of me. And I was doing really, really well. But things happen. So after about 18 months, so in November of my second year, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a type of cancer. So obviously I had to stop playing and everything like that because I had to get my treatment. Actually, funnily enough, I'd remembered before my diagnosis, because my diagnosis happened really, really quickly. So I'd remembered before my diagnosis, David Brooks at Bournemouth. I remember he got diagnosed with the exact same diagnosis that I got diagnosed with. And I remember reading the article of his diagnosis and not knowing what he got diagnosed with. And I think Bournemouth that weekend had like T-shirts out for him and things like that. So I was a bit confused. I was like, what's up with him? But obviously I knew he wasn't playing. And then, so I didn't think anything of it at the time because I didn't know what it was. And the article didn't say that it was a cancer. And then about 3 weeks later, I got the exact same diagnosis at the exact same stage with the exact same symptoms. So they have a thing where it's like A, B, C symptoms. And we both had A symptoms where it was more like asymptomatic, but the virus, like the cancer was there and it had to be dealt with.
And did that affect you in the day-to-day life? Could you not do some things that maybe you could have done before?
Of course, it'll affect everyone. I think something that people need to be aware of and people need to be really, really mindful of, especially when dealing with people that have it currently or are getting treated currently or are in that stage where they're in between or whatever. Cancer is the type of thing that affects everything in your life. Like it affects your ability to work, it affects your ability to socialize, it affects the ability to have, confidence in yourself. It affects everything. So you've got to be very, very, very mindful of the way you talk to people who have been affected and who are being affected, and even family members of that thing. So yeah, it's a lot, as you can imagine.
Of course, but from the outside, I mean, obviously, I don't know a lot about you and your life, but from looking in, you've managed to start a charity, Goals for Cure, and talk to us about that. You've managed to raise quite a good amount of money to help people. But before you mention it, is this a place? Is this a charity rather, where you raise the money and then you distribute the money towards other charities, maybe like cancer research? And if so, is it charities that are helping people with cancer, or is it looking into the research to try and find cures?
Okay, so initially, what it started with was what you just said, is in terms of collecting money through the story or an event and things like this and redistributing. But our future plans in terms of myself and in terms of people that we've got involved with us and people that we're with, is we want to, do our own thing. And the main niche that we'll be focused on is providing services to affected athletes, in terms of providing that counselling, providing that sort of sports rehabilitation, and providing just a little bit of like an arm around the shoulder type of thing. Because me, myself, and then obviously about Joe Thompson. I don't know if you've ever heard of him or if you know who he is. He's quite well known in the Manchester area and nationally. He's done a lot of media. So Joe's a really, really good friend of mine, and he's somebody that beat cancer twice, and he came back and scored the goal to keep Rochdale in the football. I think in League One at the time. So he's an amazing, amazing person, and he helped me with a lot of the event last year, and he helped me with a lot of different things as well. So he's a really, really good mate of mine. And me alongside my family, this is something that's like very, very close to our heart. And I've also got my older brother to thank, who's helped me a lot with things as well. So it's important to us, like for me, having another chance at life almost. It's important for me to help people get back on their feet and be able to, fully go for it, if that makes sense.
What came to your mind to start the charity? Were you just all of a sudden coming across your mind, or was it a hard thing with your family and an idea that you all came up with?
So the academy manager at Stockport, Damien Allen, who I mentioned before, they were very, very good with me during that second year, when I was going through all my treatment and things like this. And anything I do and anything I speak on, I always say like I owe them a huge, huge thank you, out of what they did for me. Not just Damo, even like people in and around the club. You've got a person like Ryan Jones, who was head of welfare at the time at the academy, and you've got Michael Rains, who I previously mentioned, who actually introduced me to Joe. They were fantastic with me, so they'd come like, let's say, probably every 2 weeks, just to come see me, check up on me, and see how things were and everything like that. And I'd go in sometimes, just getting in and around the lads, do a bit of a gym session and everything like that. And then one day I went in and Damo was just like, listen, the club have just asked if you want to join in on a charity event that we're doing at the end of the year. And at the start, I was very sort of hesitant because at the time when I got diagnosed and I got, I was going through my treatment and things like this, me and the family made a decision just to keep it under wraps for quite a while. So me and my teammates obviously knew, and people in and around the club knew, but not many people in my sort of like social circle or family circle knew that. Not many people did. Um, so I was a bit hesitant at the start, but then I decided to go ahead with it because I knew the power that it had, the message that the message had, and I knew it was an important message to give out. Especially with someone of my background, I'm Middle Eastern background. I don't think you get many like Middle Eastern Muslim voices speaking about this type of thing. So I thought I have something that's like a little bit unique and that I need to take full advantage of. So that's what I tried doing.
Was there a lot of hard times when you were starting this charity? I mean, in the end, you've managed to raise over £30,000. You've managed to get 12 sponsorships. Was there trouble in the start, or was it just quite a good thing because people were willing to look in and invest into the charity?
Um, Trouble in terms of it's a lot of work. I will not like when we put an event on, it's a lot of stress and a lot of work. And it takes a long time to get everything, the different parties together and everything like that. But it's rewarding. I will never ever complain about putting an event together and putting something together and saying it's too hard. You'll never ever hear that coming out of my mouth. I am a busy guy. I have a lot of things on, but that will always get my due attention and my due sort of work and effort, if that makes sense, because it's so important. Not aside from the money, like I'm also not silly. Like 30 grand's not going to cure cancer. But just the awareness part, I think, is the huge bit. Just knowing and people getting to know it and getting to, talk about it and making it a bit more normal to talk about. I think that's key. So, yeah.
And what's the long-term projection of Goals for Cure? Is it to get bigger names on, bigger stadiums, bigger crowds?
Yeah, I think that's the main thing, and I think it's just keep it going, keep the message going, keep the sort of donations going, and as I said, maybe establishing ourselves as a bit of our own entity in order to provide better services for like our the people that we help, and it helps in terms of meeting some amazing people. Like I got to share a pitch with like people like Joleon Lescott who've played in World Cups and won Premier Leagues and things like that. He also got to nutmeg me, and I got to nutmeg him, which was great. So it was fun. It's a great day. It was a great day out. Last year's was great, and I'm sure you can stay tuned. This year's will be even better.
Is there any plans to is this up in Manchester? Are you gonna plan to bring it down to London and do an event down here?
We think so. This is not something that's like not even just UK based. We want to expand further in the future. It just takes time. I've got my own professional commitments. Actually, one thing that I'll mention quickly is I'm currently finding a football project out in the UAE as well, which will take a lot of my time soon enough. So yeah, it's something that we want to expand to different regions, and we want to hit the right sort of target groups and people to help, because people need a lot of help when it comes to this. Like, all the cancer numbers are going up, so we need to do what we can. I'm really passionate about that, and everybody involved with the charity is as well.
You mentioned that cancer numbers are going up. Is that why? Why is that?
I think three things. I think the pandemic was a huge one. Me doing my own research and me having my own opinions, I'll say the main thing is the way that we're consuming food and drinks. I think that is a huge one. I think the way that, like genetically modified food, then all the crap that we eat is a huge one. It is a really, really big one. Sometimes it is just like genetics and fate as well. Sometimes it's something that's just out of your control. Um, and the third one I think is like the mental health disorders that you're getting. So I think there's a clear link between mental health and anxiety and things like that, and the prevalence and the occurrence of like cancers, for example. It's it's huge, and it's something that even once you're going through your treatment, you need to be very, very conscious of, and you need to keep your spirits high, because again, studies have shown that if you're positive and if you have good endorphins flowing through your body, it helps the treatment do what it needs to do and get rid of the tumors within the body. So that part is really, really important.
I mean, I've often heard a lot that if you go to a country that's a bit more natural with food, maybe they don't eat as much, McDonald's or whatever they might eat, they're usually away from cancer quite a lot. A lot of them have less chance of getting cancer. And do you think diet would be the main reason as to why? I mean, we see that Coca-Cola, for example, filled with sugar, is so available and so ready to buy off the shelves, and it is essentially killing people.
I think that's a really, really big one. If I'm honest with you, I think diet is a huge one. Um, I think from my own experiences, like I've really cut down on sugar ever since, and I felt so much better from it. I know, for example, my friend Joe, he cut down. Like, he just became veggie. He doesn't eat chicken or meat anymore. A lot of people, because of all the genetic modification with chicken and meat and stuff like that, cut down and cut that out completely. So people have their own theories and their own. I'm not a doctor at the end of the day, but what works for me is I just chose to do some more natural stuff. So like, I take a lot of natural oils, which helped me because my energy levels were my energy levels were just gone for a very, very long time. So I take a lot of, like, for example, one thing I'd recommend is like black seed oil. Black seed oil is a really, really good one, and it helps with your immunity to like getting ill and things like that. So, for example, like I don't want to give myself like a devil's eye or anything. I haven't had like a cold or anything this winter, and that's because I'm constantly taking that and fish oil and things like that, and I'm trying to stay as healthy as possible. So I'm a big advocate for that, and I think people should do their own research and see what works for them.
And lastly, the work that you're doing in the UAE, what would that mean for people?
Okay, that's a very, very general question. So it's like a football education program. And for me, the UAE program is something that is born out of my own experiences. So it's something where I want to provide a platform for players to be able to earn a top level educational degree alongside a top level coaching and football stewardship, and getting players into professional entities, whether that's here in the UK, whether that's elsewhere in Europe, whether that's in the Middle East. As we see, like at the moment, the Middle East is the fastest growing football market in the world, with the influx of cash in Saudi, Qatar obviously hosting Asian Cup, World Cup, and Arab Cup, and everything like that. The UAE building all sorts of infrastructure that you can think about to do with football. Um, so I think the market, and in general, there's a really, really good push for players to be able to come over and express their talent. So you've even got like the UAE second and third division, which is a great initiative by the UAE FA, which helps players, come in and build their sort of professional resume to move on higher up the leagues within the country and abroad. So I think the sort of opportunity is massive, and hopefully we get it right and we cater to people's needs.
Well, Bader, I wish you all the best in doing that, and I wish you all the best in everything that is going to be coming your way very, very soon. Thank you very much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you very much.